Welcome to another video tutorial. In this video, I'm going to start a 3-part mini-series on the topic of scripting inside RPG in a Box. I figured this would be a good idea, first of all, to cover, but also to split it out into 3 videos rather than try and do a whole mega video on scripting, because it's such a broad topic and there's so many things you could talk about. So, here's what I'm going to cover in the 3 videos I have planned. So this video is just going to be a quick introduction to how scripting works inside RPG in a Box. I'm going to introduce the scripts editor, explain the differences between the visual script editor and the box site editor. I'm going to briefly talk about how you then use scripts, where you can put them, how to get them to work. And then in the second video, we're going to take a look at all of these RPG in a Box specific functions. So those are all the things that you can do in a script. So, having doors open or animations play, all those sorts of things. So all just breaking down all the functions that you can do inside RPG in a Box that are specific only to this engine. And then in the third and final video will be the main discussion about scripting, and I'm going to talk about how concepts like for loops work, how while loops work, how evaluate condition nodes work, so if, else, that sort of thing. Talk about variables, talk about the different data types like arrays, booleans, strings, everything that's to do with the sort of real complicated, if you will, part of scripting. That's where we'll start diving into the real, how do you start working with scripts and how do you start making things in your games. So that will come in the third and sort of final part. So feel free to skip to video 3 if you're already familiar with the script editor and you're already familiar with the functions. But these first 2 videos are really to, if you're a complete beginner to RPG in a Box, and you want to know, how do I start making things? How do I start making my game work? How do I make it do things? So in this video, let's start by taking a look at how do you write scripts and what are the 2 ways of writing scripts. And then once I've written a script, where can I assign these scripts? So if you're going to write a script, then what you'll typically do is you'll click the script editor along the top section of the interface here. So if I click script editor, and then what you'll do is you'll click new, and then you'll give your script a name. And usually you'll name your script something that's relevant to what the script is going to do. So if it's, for example, a script that opens a door, then you might call it open door. You might even be more specific than that, open door boss, if it's the door to the boss, whatever, right? But you can call these scripts anything you want, but typically you would name them something to do with the task at hand. So because this is a tutorial, I will just call this script 1. And then you click OK. And then what you'll be met with when you've named your script is you'll be met with this screen here. And let's quickly break down what you see in front of you. So the most important things to note are the script tools on the left-hand side, this section here. You'll see there's available logic, and this is what we're going to get more into in the third video, because this is where the really complicated stuff comes in, like variables, if checks, while loops, for loops, all that sort of stuff. That's done here. But in the second video, we're going to break down all of these. These are all the RPG in a Box specific functions that you can make things happen in your game. Now, I'm going to put my hand up and say I haven't used all of these functions myself personally. So while I can definitely go into detail on some of them, others might have to be, there will only be so much I can explain at this point. But what I will say before we go any further is that each function does have fairly good documentation. So if you want to know how something works, like what a function does, like for example, disable container, what does this do? you can click the View Full Documentation button here, and it should bring you up with a page in the Documentation tab, taking you to the page that explains what it does and how you might lay it out in the text script mode, but also what it looks like in the Visual Script, which we'll come back to in a minute. We're jumping the gun a bit here, but the point is, although my knowledge of some of the functions will be limited, there is fairly good documentation for most of the functions inside RPG in a Box anyway. And obviously, if you have any questions that I'm unable to cover in this series, then feel free to post on the Discord, and I'm sure there'll be some people on there that can help explain a function to you if you're unsure of how it works. So going back to the script editor, so the script tools, you have the available logic and the available functions. So these can be considered things that sort of make things happen, and these are what happens. So what specific game-related things should happen in your game. For example, hide a widget, hide a toolbar, hide the inventory, load game, load map. Some of these are pretty self-explanatory. Fail quest. You get the idea. These are things that should happen, events that should be triggered at certain points in your game. So the next thing we have is this main area here, which is called the Visual Script Editor. And the way this works is it's node-based. Okay, so for example, here we have a display message node that's currently got the text in it, hello world. And we can click and drag this and move it around, and it's connected by this wire or cable or whatever you want to call it. It's connected to this start node here, which basically every script starts here. So if we were to disconnect that by clicking on the yellow connection node here, and then just drag off and let go, then now this script doesn't do anything. Although we have the display message node in the Visual Script, because it's not linked up to the start of the script, essentially the script does nothing. However, the moment we drag a line from the blue node to the yellow node and connect them up, now this script will display this message. Okay? You can delete nodes by pressing the red cross and delete nodes that way. And then basically to populate your scripts, you would choose the function that you want in the list on the left. Let's say, where's start battle? You can filter for things, so you can type battle, for example, and it will give you all of the functions that have that text in the name. So let's say, for example, we want a battle to start when this script is run. So we can click and drag the start battle function into the Visual Script window, let go, and it appears in the editor. And it's already linked to the script, to the start of the script. If you want to change that, you can do that if you go to the Settings button along the very top and go to the Script Editor. You can turn off Auto Connect New Nodes. So that way, if we turn this off, for example, and say OK, we can delete that. And if we drag it in again, this time it stays disconnected and you will have to manually connect them up. Now you might ask yourself, why would you do that? Because, you run the risk of not having things be connected. That's true, but it just, sometimes if you drag something in and it automatically gets connected to something you didn't want it to be connected to, then obviously there might be instances where you'd rather it just didn't connect to something until you're ready to connect it. So you choose how you wish to handle the script editor, but you can turn that ability on and off in this setting here. You can also change the color of the wires. So for example, we could make this red and we could make this green, for example. And now if we say OK, then green is the output and red will be the input. Okay, so you've got complete customizability of how you want your Visual Script Editor to look. Now, as you drag nodes or functions into the Visual Script Editor, you'll see that at the bottom, text or code starts to appear. For example, we have the text start_battle and then in quotes battle name. If I was to change well, I don't actually have a battle set up, so this is probably a bad example. So let's delete this for a second and let's add in display message again. So if I was to drag this in and let go, it creates this text that wasn't there before. And if I delete it, the text goes away. And if I change the node, it should change the code down here. So if I, instead of saying hello world, say hello viewers, and if I click off, you can see it's changed down here. So whatever you do in the visual script is reflected in what's called the Bauxite code. So Bauxite is basically the language, the scripting language, if you will, that RPG in a Box uses. So everything you do in the visual script editor behind the scenes is also being written out here. So for example, let's say I add a few more. So let's have a battle start, for example. So we can drag that to there. You can see it adds the battle underneath. We could play an animation. So everything we drag into the visual script editor is also building at the same time the script that you can look at the same time underneath. And if you click this button here, you can expand and compact the code window if you're preferring to type the code rather than drag and use the visual nodes, then you can do that. Myself personally, I tend to use the code now more than the visual script, just because it's quicker to type. Once you start to know what the text is, it's much quicker to just type it than it is to find it in the list and drag it in and connect it all up. But if you're a beginner, then obviously that's what the visual script editor is for. It's good for learning the code, learning what the functions are. But do take a look at the Bauxite code as you build your scripts, so they can help you start to learn and slowly move away from relying so much on the visual script editor. You can still use it, but I think you'll find that as you get more used to it, you'll find this so much quicker. So we should also mention that at the bottom of the screen is the Bauxite code window, as I say, that builds the code as you drag nodes in from the left into the main window. But we can also type our own code. So for example, we can click edit, and that dims out the visual script editor to let us know that we're no longer using this. We are typing into this box and it's now lit up. So I could add a new line and I could type, for example, start battle, and I could enter a new name. Let's say boss fight 1, add a semicolon. And now if I click apply and save, you'll see that at the moment there is no start battle node after the play animation. The play animation is the last thing we dragged in. But because I've typed start battle boss fight, as soon as I click apply and save, you should see that at the very end, it's added a node for start battle. So anything you do in this window affects this window, and everything you do in this window affects that window. So it's important to know they are synchronized, okay? And that's how it works. So it's important. One thing worth mentioning is if you are on the Discord and you want help with scripting, generally it's a good idea. What we would typically ask for when we ask to see code is this code. It's a lot easier to diagnose issues with scripts via looking at the text than it is trying to look at the visual script and see how things are all connected and wired up and all of that. So it's easy to copy and paste the text into Discord, because you can just come down to this section of the program, expand this out so all you can see is the code, click edit, highlight all your code, copy, and then cancel, and then go to Discord and then paste, and then that will allow myself and others who are on there to diagnose issues with your script. And if we write any scripts out, all you have to do is paste them back by clicking edit and then paste, like that. Okay. Now let's talk about, once you've written a script, where does it get used? So before I do that, actually, there was one last thing I wanted to mention, which if we go back to the settings section, there's this option here as well, which is expand source code by default. So if we turn that on and press OK, then it means that if we close our script and we open it up again, open it up again, it automatically shows the language code rather than the visual code. It automatically expands this. So the more you get used to code and you just want to start writing code rather than using the Visual Script Editor, then this setting here will just give you a shortcut where you can, every time you open a script, it will always have the source code, this bit here, automatically maximized for you every time you open a script. But until you're ready to do that, then obviously you can disable that option here as well. So with that said, that's pretty much all there is to say about the Visual Script Editor. So we will go over all of these functions in the next video, but now let's take a look at, once you've written a script, where do your scripts get used? So there's a myriad of places where scripts can be used, and the thing to understand about RPG in a Box is it's an event-based engine. So everything that happens in RPG in a Box is triggered by various different events. So for example, if we go up here to the game configuration section and open this up, we have an area called Global Event Scripts. And if we click that, we can see a whole series of events that trigger scripts. For example, camera direction changes. So anytime the camera direction changes, we could have something happen. Player character levels up. That would be another event. So whenever a player character levels up, trigger a script. Player is defeated, trigger a script. A character's health changes, trigger a script. Character enters a tile, stops on a tile, exits a tile, trigger a script. Character is hurt or damaged, trigger a script. An object is grabbed, pushed, or released, trigger a script. A tool item changes, trigger a script. Quest given, quest completed, quest failed, trigger a script. So these are all the sort of global events. So just game-wide, if a player is defeated, or game-wide, if a character steps on a tile, or a quest is given, or a character levels up, then these are the scripts that would be triggered in those moments. So what you would do is, let's say we've got our script 1 over here, which currently does all of this. Let's say we wanted this to all happen when a character takes damage. So what you would do is you go to your game configuration after you've saved your script. So you will have saved all of this, and then you'll go to character is damaged, and you would drop this down, and this would be a list of all the scripts that you've written and saved. So you would find your script and you'd click it, and because it's now assigned to this event, anytime a character is damaged, all of this will happen. Okay? But this isn't the only area where we can assign our scripts. Other areas include maps. So here's a map, for example. If we go to the map properties, we have a preload script and a postload script. What are those, and what's the difference? These are basically scripts that happen when a map loads. So preload is anything that should happen before the map itself is loaded. Postload is the opposite. It's anything that should happen once it's loaded. So for example, if you wanted a cutscene to play right at the beginning of the game, then you could have a postload script so that after your first map loads, it then starts triggering a cutscene. So your cutscene script would be assigned into this section here. Other areas where you can assign scripts are objects. So if we drag an object into our map for a second and select it, we have various different script options for our objects located here. So if we collapse this down, we have various events, character interacts and character collides. So character interacts is when they click on the object, then we can have something happen. So we could have our script play, or we could have map load, whatever. And then character collides is, an NPC or the player walking into this object, and then you could have a script trigger in that scenario. Other places include NPCs and player characters, or mainly NPCs. So you place a character down, click on them, and in their behaviors is the ability to set when the player interacts, run a script, or when next to the player, so i.e. they're standing on the tile next to them, run a script, or when the player collides, like usually bumps into them, run a script, or on death. So if a character dies, run a script. So if you want to assign a script to a character, then obviously you have to find the right event. So which one of these is relevant to your scenario? And then you have to drop down this list to change do nothing to specifically run script. And then the next option is the script itself. And that's where we can choose, for example, script 1. So now that will happen when we interact with the NPC. Okay. Another place where you can assign scripts is on tiles. So if we click a tile, for example, and we go to scripts, there is a trigger event for scripts where there's 6 possible events for scripts. There's character enters tile, character stops on tile, character exits tile. So character enters tile is as soon as they enter the tile. Character stops on tile is the moment they stop, but they are still standing on that tile. So typically it would be the center. Exits tile is as soon as they exit that tile. So as soon as they're no longer on that tile, then trigger a script. And an object is the same as these, but for when an object enters the tile. So if you push, for example, a crate onto a tile, then you want the object to either trigger the script as soon as it enters the tile, or once you stop pushing an object onto that tile, or when you push the object off of that tile. Those would be the various different events that you would assign scripts to. It's also worth mentioning as well that you don't have to always assign script resources or files to your events. You can also use what are called quick scripts. So if you haven't created a script, but you just want to quickly have, let's say, for example, as soon as the player steps onto this tile, I want a message to appear, then all I have to do is select the event, so enters tile, and instead I can do quick script. Now, the thing to understand with quick script is it doesn't use the visual script editor. So you will have to be somewhat familiar with the Botxite code, because when we click the pencil, that's what's going to come up. Okay, so when we edit our code, we are going to be typing in our functions. However, it is worth noting that if you can't remember the name of the function, so let's say display message wasn't in there, and I'm thinking to myself, what's the name of that function that shows a message? Well, you can type message, and you can see it here, and you can drag it into the code window, and it will fill out both the function name, but also anything that can go within it. So now we can edit this text and say you stand on the tile. And we can validate that, make sure it's valid code. So click validate and it will say it's valid. Click OK, and now that's done. And if we want to, we can click the save button and it will convert it from being a quick script to an actual script file, i.e. one of these ones here. If you don't save it, then you will lose it if you select none. So if you ever at any point decide, actually I don't want this tile to display a message, I set it to none, then the moment I go, actually no, I do want it to display a message, and I say quick script, although this is a bad example because it always by default puts display message in as the function, but you'll notice my text that I changed has reverted back. So if we had a whole load of script in here, let's say for example, let's get rid of that. Let's say we had a script that was doing that, and doing that, doing that, doing that, doing that, validate, OK. So here we've got a complicated, long, quick script that we've just quickly thrown together, as soon as I say, actually, I don't want to do that, and then change our mind and go, actually, I do, we lose it. Okay. So if you think that there's going to be an element where I am probably going to want to use this script, but I want to change it for some reason, then it's a good idea to click save, and we'll call it example for now. And now if we go to our script editor, we can see example here, and we can now edit it using the script editor. And more importantly, it's saved, and we can later assign it as the script. Okay. The other final place, unless I'm forgetting something, so if somebody lets me know if I do forget a place where you can, oh yeah, there are a couple of other places you can assign scripts. There's quite a few, so it's important to sort of think about this. So other places where you can assign scripts is the dialog editor. So when you create dialog, let's just quickly create a new one. We have script nodes. So we can have an NPC say something, and then we could have a script node, and then you can either write the script out, like the quick script we were talking about earlier. Obviously, you'll lose it if you change it. Or you can click resource, and then you can pick one of your script files and have it change and use that script. Okay. Other areas where you can place scripts are in user interface. So if you create a custom interface, like say, for example, this widget here, I could bring this down. I could have an on close script. So when you click the close button, something could happen. Or if we add a button, we can have the button run a script when we click it. So there's other places where you can have scripts be run. Items can take scripts. So for example, we could set an item up so that when you use an item, it triggers a script. Or when you equip an item, then when you equip the item, you can have a script run. And when you unequip the script, you can have another script run. You've got is there any weapon scripts? I'm not sure. No, it doesn't look like it. So that's the equip script. Tool item is where you can also set a script. You can use a global script, and then you'd specify the script that should run when you use the tool item. Or you can use entity script. And if we were now to save this object, what is Apple, then if we go back to our map and let's place this object, if we select this object, then now it opens up a new option which wasn't there before, which is Apple. And that's available now because we saved the Apple as a tool that uses entity script. So just to show that again, we've got our Apple, but we've set it to tool on, and we've set this to use entity script. Okay. This just basically dictates the distance. So should you be right next to, in this case, this button in order for the tool to work, or can you use it unlimited, i.e. no matter where you are, as soon as you use this tool, it will affect that entity. Typically, if it involves an entity, you would want to be close to it. Yeah. So because we've saved this Apple, in this case, as a tool item using this entity script, it makes this option appear on the entity, which on the object that you would like to use the tool on. So this, for example, could be a boulder, and your pickaxe could be the tool. So you'd select your boulder and you would set the Apple tool, and then the script you would then assign to break the boulder, give you rock, stone, whatever, that sort of thing. So if you, for example, wanted to make a mining game, then you'd have a rock entity here, set the tool event, and then you'd write a script that says, destroy the entity, give the player 20 stone, whatever, etc. So that's how you would set that up. Quests can have scripts. So there's a completion script and a failure script. So if your quest fails, then you can set a script to happen. If a quest is completed successfully, you can have another script trigger. And then finally, I think this is the final area. Let me just check the stats. I don't think stats have scripts. Possibly actually with skills. Skills don't seem to have scripts. Status effects might. Maybe not. So maybe stats themselves don't particularly have scripts, but they will be used in scripts. Just check the leveling quickly. No. But definitely combat is another one. So combat, you can set scripts for battles. Let's just call this battle 1. So victory script. So when you win a battle, something happens, or when you're defeated in battle, something else happens. Okay. I think that's the only place in here where scripts get triggered is in the actual battle itself. Trying to think, is there any other areas where scripts get run? The other area where scripts get run is at the beginning of the game. At the very, 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 very beginning, there's something called a startup script. And typically this would be your first map loading. So a startup script can do many different things. But at the moment, my startup script, like most standard startup scripts, just loads the first map and sets the coordinates where the player should spawn. So you would then, once you've got your startup script set up, you would ensure that your startup script is set to the correct script. Because if I was, for example, to set it to this script, because this script doesn't have a load map function in it, it just starts battles and displays messages and all of that, our game wouldn't work because no map is being loaded. So your startup script has to obviously include at some point a request to load the first map. And you would assign that script into this section here. So those are the areas where you can assign scripts. So the thing to understand with RPG in a Box is it's event driven. So there's no sort of main area where you just script all of the code for your game. It's actually done in bits and pieces. So you have lots of different script files, and then you assign those different scripts to various different events that happen throughout the game. And as RPG in a Box gets developed, more and more events will obviously be added to the engine. So different events can trigger different things as the engine progresses. But for now, those are the main ways in which you can make things happen in your game. So hopefully this has been a good introduction to scripting in RPG in a Box. We haven't gone into anything practical. We haven't, made a script or anything like that. The purpose of this video, very beginner, is just to introduce to you where the scripting is done, what the interface is, what the different areas are, how you use the Visual Script Editor. So you drag nodes in and you can move them around. Obviously, we can also, it's worth mentioning that we can rearrange our nodes as well. So for example, if I add character node in, at the moment this happens before this one, but I can obviously move these around. Obviously that doesn't do anything yet. I need to actually disconnect these. So let's disconnect that one and disconnect that one, and then we can rewire them up. So usually what's a good idea is if you know you're going to move something around, then you can, is there a way to disconnect? No. Then usually you disconnect them first while they're in a straight line, and then that allows you to move them around, rearrange things, and wire them up again, like that. And scripts are done, it's worth mentioning this at this point, scripts are done in a top-down fashion, so this will get executed before this. So the map will load, and then the character will be added. But if we were to move these around, do it the other way around, you'll see that once again, whatever we do up here gets reflected down here. So we're adding the character first, followed by loading the map. Now this will not work as a script because the map gets loaded after a request to add a character. It won't add the character because there's no world to add the character to. So it will either error, or at best what it will do is it will just load the map, but this character won't be there. Okay? So you have to do things in a particular order. So just understand that scripts are read from top to bottom, and order of execution is kind of important. And we'll get into that a little bit more as this mini series goes on. So hopefully that's helped. And as I say, the other thing we've covered is then where, once you've saved your scripts, can you then assign them? Where are they used? That sort of thing. So with that said, that will wrap up this first video. Just a quick one, just to introduce the script editor from a very beginner entry level. And as I say, in the next video, we'll take a look at each of these functions. I'll quickly explain what they do, what they should be used for. I might give a couple of examples, or at the very least explain the ways in which you use them. And then in the final video, we'll take a much more in-depth look at scripting and things to understand with how you write scripts. So how to do good if conditions, how for loops work, the difference between variables, and all of that sort of stuff, and how to actually start scripting your games from a practical point of view. Okay, so that will wrap up this video. Thanks for watching.